Fallout Equestria, Finding Rainbow Dash, by Civil War Pony, read by Forrest. Chapter 7, War Comes Again. Flying high over the blasted wasteland that was once the beautiful land of Equestria, Rainbow Dash says, "I can't believe how much it has changed." Airborne looks down at the blasted windswept land and says, "What was it like before the war?" Rainbow Dash replies, "It was pure awesomeness. My friends and I would go camping in the woods or go with Rarity to the spa and just relax. One of my favorite times of the year is when the Apple family would create their famous cider. Every year, though, they ended up running out, and I wouldn't ever get some. But when these scruffy pair of brothers, whose names were Flim and Flam, they had created a machine that could create enough apple cider for every pony who had been lined up for days to get some of the famous cider. Eventually, the apples challenged them to a contest to see who could make the most cider. The apples put up quite a fight, but they couldn't make enough on their own. Then Twilight asked the mayor of Ponyville if she and the rest of us could help out, because we were practically members of the Apple family ourselves. I ran alongside Big Macintosh on a treadmill, and needless to say, with Big Macintosh's strength and my awesomeness, almost beat those two fancy brothers and their dang machine. But the ponies who drank the brothers' cider complained it had too much wood pulp in it because the machine had ground up the actual apple trees themselves to make the cider. Well, after that, we were declared the winner, and I was finally able to get a drink of the precious cider." In the distance, Rainbow can see the remains of the apple farm. The barn, although weathered from 200 years of not being cared for, still stands. Ahead, Airborne can see the vast green expanse of the ever-free forest. The forest itself had survived the war relatively untouched due to the place being abnormal even in the years before the war. And even now, few ponies dared to enter it. Rainbow banked her wings in the direction of Fluttershy's cottage, with Airborne following close behind her. The sun had begun to set, and the sky lit up with a reddish glow. Airborne could see numerous ponies milling about the small cottage, which had managed to survive the bomb blast relatively intact. Airborne lands first, seeing a number of Pegasus ponies who immediately level their battle saddles at him. A few of them were wearing the remains of the old Enclave armor. Others simply wore a hodgepodge of whatever scraps of metal they could find and fashioned them into armor. From the group of Pegasus yells, "Stand down! He's with us!" From the back of the ranks walks a pony whom Airborne doesn't immediately recognize until the pony pulls off his helmet and says, "It's been a long time, Airborne. I'm glad to see you are all right." Airborne pulls Hurricane Wind into a hug, saying, "How did you end up here? And you're leading the Dashites?" Airborne releases Hurricane Wind, who replies, "Well, normally we Dashites don't have a leader. Even in New Cloudsdale there's no leader. We, more or less, choose the way we want to live. But because of the Enclave's activities, we have had no choice but to create leaders. I was selected to lead the troops who came here to aid Fluttershy." Airborne looks at the other Pegasi who fall silent as Rainbow Dash lands in the middle of them. Rainbow Dash's magenta eyes scan the crowd of ponies, many of whom have painted her cutie mark onto their armor. She waves a hoof and says, "Hello, every pony. I'm back." The crowd of ponies erupt into cheers. Rainbow Dash blushes slightly, then trots forward to Hurricane Wind, who dips his head as a sign of respect, saying, "We have waited a long time for your return, Rainbow Dash. Each pony here is willing to fight and die to protect you. We will lay down our lives for the greatest Pegasus in history." Rainbow Dash looks around at Hurricane Wind, then says, "I don't want you to die for me, but fight alongside me instead." Hurricane Wind nods and replies, "Yes, ma'am." Airborne says, Why is the Enclave attacking the Dashites again? I thought they failed 15 years ago when their operation failed. Hurricane Wind looks at Airborne and Rainbow Dash, saying, Yes, their operation did fail, and they have been licking their wounds since then. But 15 years is still long enough to gather whatever resources they had left and use them to complete their goals. The Enclave salvaged parts from their lost cloud ships, and they have made repairs to the few they have left, but the Enclave also has a new weapon. One more terrifying than any cloud ship. Airborne asks, What is this new weapon? Hurricane Wind replies, It is a remnant from the Great War. They call it a Phoenix bomb. Rainbow Dash's face goes pale, and Airborne looks at her, saying, You know what it is, don't you, Rainbow Dash? She shakes her head, her mane falling over her face, saying, After Fluttershy arranged for the zebras to have their own megaspells, there was a group that called itself the Equestrian Defense League that sought to build even more powerful megaspells to defend Equestria, if the zebras decided to launch their own at us. They eventually got the funding they needed to develop a new type of weapon that would forever change the war. They called the project Ashes. I remember seeing the blueprints for the weapon. I thought that if such a weapon could be built, the ponies responsible would be insane to conceive of it. The bomb was modeled after the balefire bombs the zebras have been building. The weapon was designed to detonate over a city and vaporize all the ponies inside, while leaving the buildings and other materials relatively intact. Towards the end of the war, when things were starting to fall apart real fast, they rushed the Phoenix bomb into product. It was thought that should the zebras threaten to launch their bombs at Equestria, we would strike first, then invade the zebra homeland to collect whatever technology and information they had there. They had succeeded in producing at least one weapon, but it never saw service because the zebras destroyed Equestria with their weapons. And we did the same to them with ours. So in the end, the weapon that could have saved us and ended the war never saw use. What I'm curious about is how did the Enclave get their hooves on the only one we built? Hurricane Wind says, The Enclave has led frequent patrols down into Equestria, salvaging whatever materials they can find. I was the one that led the patrol that found the Phoenix bomb. Once I saw the research notes detailing what it could do, I left the Enclave. Airborne says, So what does the Enclave intend to do with the bomb? Hurricane Wind replies, They have rigged one of their last remaining Thunderhead-class cloud ships as the delivery system for the bomb. I have no doubt they plan to crash the ship into New Cloudsdale and kill as many ponies as they can. But we have a plan to stop them. I have brought my best engineers and bomb experts from New Cloudsdale. I will lead 3 teams to infiltrate the cloud ship. Once inside, one of the teams will secure the engine room, another will disable the bomb, and the last will secure the bridge. If everything goes as planned, we should be able to render the bomb useless and land the ship without too much resistance from the Enclave. Just as Hurricane Wind finishes speaking, a Pegasus pony swoops down out of the sky, his chest heaving as he tries to catch his breath. Then he opens his mouth, saying, The Enclave is on the move. They are already halfway to New Cloudsdale. The lead cloud ship they have chosen to move the bomb is called the Titan's Hammer, and they have at least 6 Raptor-class ships protecting it. Our forces have begun to evacuate New Cloudsdale. Turning to Hurricane Wind, the Pegasus says, They request that you withdraw your forces here and help escort the Dashite Council to a pre-established safe zone. Hurricane Wind tells the courier, And you can tell them I won't be leaving my post here. Our best chance to save New Cloudsdale is to stop the Titan's Hammer before it gets to the city. Otherwise, everything is lost. The Pegasus courier salutes Hurricane Wind and quickly flies away. Hurricane Wind replies, "Great, that puts a huge hole in my plan. I won't be able to lead the attack and try to coordinate our forces to delay the Cloud ship at the same time." Airborne looks at him saying, "You won't have to. I will lead the infiltration teams. All you have to do is just buy me some time." Rainbow Dash says, "You can count me in. This sounds like it's going to be fun." Hurricane Wind replies, "I cannot ask you to do that, Rainbow Dash. It is better if we get you to safety. We cannot afford to lose the best hope for peace we have by dying in battle." Rainbow Dash stamps her hoof, saying, "I have slept for over 200 years, as Equestria fell into ruins all because of the decisions I made, and now I have a chance to fix this. You want me to turn my tail and fly away like some filly? No way is what I say. Even if I die, I will go out fighting as the Pegasus should." From behind, Airborne calls out a voice saying, "Well then, if you're going, then so will we." Airborne turns around and sees Fractured, Celestial, and a heavily bandaged Starshine standing there. He says, "How did you guys get here so fast?" Fractured replies, "Celestial got us here. She can be real bossy when she wants to be." Airborne looks at Starshine and says, "You really want to do this? You look like you can barely stand, let alone fly." She replies, "Airborne, how many times have I told you? It will take more than Yetis and bullets to stop me." Rainbow Dash turns from the group of friends to see Fluttershy standing in the doorway of her cottage. By now, every other pony had noticed the two looking at each other, and they fall silent in reverence to these two legendary ponies and friends from Equestria's golden age. Fluttershy says, "Good to see you, Rainbow Dash. I take it you were sleeping again?" Rainbow Dash rubs one of her hooves against her forelegs, blushing, then replies, "Yeah, you know me. I can't pass up a good nap when the opportunity presents itself." Fluttershy giggles, then rushes forward and pulls Rainbow into a hug, saying, "I have missed you." Rainbow Dash replies back, "So have I." All around, ponies wipe tears away from their eyes. Even Airborne has a hard time trying not to weep for joy at the sight of the two old friends finally meeting again for the first time in 200 years. Hurricane Wind notices a large shadow descending out of the clouds above him, and he thinks, "Don't tell me the Enclave is attacking now." But before he can train the barrels of his battle saddle onto the figures, Fluttershy cries out, "Don't shoot! They are friendly!" A group of griffins land in the middle of the gathered crowd of ponies. Their leader is the largest griffin Airborne has ever seen. Her body and armor covered in the scars of war, she opened her mouth, saying, "My name is Hawkbeak," gesturing to her griffin, saying, "And these are Hawkbeak's talons. We have come to fight with you, ponies, and finally put these damned Enclave bastards in their place." Fluttershy walks up to Hawkbeak and says, "Am I glad to see that the talons have come to help us?" Hawkbeak replies, "Well, it's the least we can do for you, Fluttershy. After all, you have sheltered many a wounded griffin in your compound and treated them with care. So I figured we can lend a claw and help you out." Fluttershy smiles and says, "Help yourselves to our supplies. I'm sure you will find we have plenty to spare." Hawkbeak gestures for a few of her talons to gather the offered supplies. As she walks through the crowd of ponies, she spots Airborne, and raising a clawed paw, she says, "So, you're the pony I've heard so much about lately. I hear you've gave the Enclave a bloody nose by finding her." She gestures to Rainbow Dash, then continues to say, "Good for you. Glad to see that some pony down here has had their head screwed on straight and isn't trying to find the deepest hole to hide in." Airborne replies, Thanks, I guess. Hawkbeak nods and replies, Think nothing of it. Hawkbeak and her talons outfit their battle saddles with missile launchers and armor-piercing bullets. Hawkbeak herself carries a massive chain gun on her back. She notices Airborne looking at it, and she says, Nice, isn't it? I call him Hellfire's brand. Airborne asks, I've only seen chain guns in some old books I found a long time ago. Where did you find him? Hawkbeak replies, Sorry, I can't say. After all, it's a bad policy to tell anyone the source of where you get your weapons. Airborne nods in agreement. Later that evening, Airborne and his friends sit around a roaring campfire and listen as Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy trade their stories from their youth. Starshine gets up from the log she had been sitting on and walks away from the fire. Airborne notices her leave and trots up to her saying, What's up? She turns replying, Airborne, I want you to know, just in case we don't make it tomorrow, that I have always loved you. Airborne blushes deeply and replies, I have always loved you as well. Starshine trots closer, looking into Airborne's blue eyes as the moonlight shines down onto them, illuminating the two ponies as they kiss. Rainbow Dash nudges Fluttershy, who looks at them and smiles, saying, That is something you don't see enough of anymore here in Equestria. Rainbow Dash says, What is? Kissing? I'm pretty sure there was plenty of that back in our day. Fluttershy rolls her eyes and says, No, I mean you don't see enough ponies in love. But I guess after everything that's happened there really are more important things to do than fall in love. Fractured and Celestial look at their friends, and he says, I guess that is one way to relieve stress before a suicide mission. Celestial silently nods, watching them, then goes back to sharpening her knife. The following morning, Hurricane Wind trots up to Airborne with a set of old Enclave armor, saying, I have recovered this from the Rock of Destiny. I figured it would provide better protection than that rusted bucket of yours you're wearing for armor. Airborne slips into his old Enclave armor, surprised to find it still fits. Starshine helps tighten the straps on the armor, saying, I think you would be better wearing your old armor, but if this stuff helps you get back safely, then I guess it's as good as any armor, I suppose. Airborne puts on a small headset, then places his trademark hat over it, saying, There, now I will be able to communicate with you. Looking at Fractured and Celestial, he says, How are you supposed to come with us to infiltrate the cloud ship? Fractured replies, A few of the engineer ponies have volunteered to fly me and Celestial. Besides, I will be leading the squad that will be responsible for securing the bridge, while Celestial will lead the squad that will secure the engine room. Before they depart, Airborne grabs a few buckets of paint and writes the names of Lightning Dust and Thunderlane on his armor as good luck charms. Starshine takes the brush from him and paints Rainbow Dash's cutie mark onto his armor, saying, Since you and I never received the brand most of our fellow Dashites bear, it is only fitting that we wear her mark into battle on our armor. She turns, showing him that she too has painted the symbol of their greatest hope on the armor protecting her flank. She pulls Airborne close and says, Let's do this. He nods and tries to respond, but she kisses him deeply, then releases him, blushing. Airborne blushes as well and stammers, I guess I will have to learn to be the one to make the first move first. Rainbow Dash stands before the group of assembled ponies, saying, I am not one for big speeches, but what I do know is this. I am partly responsible for the misery you ponies have lived through the last 200 years, and I aim to make this land, our land, right again. So I will fight as hard as I can for as long as I can. I expect that you will do the same. So let's move out! The Pegasi and the remnants of Fluttershy's followers salute Rainbow Dash, Then the Pegasi flap their wings and soar into the air, with Hurricane Wind at the head of the group, who are followed by Hawkbeak and her talons. Fluttershy's ponies thunder out of the camp and take up position in a long trench bristling with AA guns at regular 50-yard intervals. Before Rainbow Dash and Airborne take off, Fluttershy walks up to them saying, I wish I could join you. Just make me this promise. Come back alive. I don't want any more ponies dying for my mistakes. Rainbow replies, For our mistakes. Now let's make our friends proud. Rainbow Dash soars into the air, leaving a rainbow contrail behind her. Airborne and his friends follow close behind. Fractured, looking at the rapidly disappearing ground, says, Remind me to never do this again. Celestial nods in agreement. Hurricane's ponies take up position as Rainbow Dash leads the squads, who are to infiltrate the massive cloud ship, into a cloud bank. On the horizon, they can see a massive ship appropriately named the Titan's Hammer floating towards them. The whirring engines of the Raptor cloud ships fill the air. Hurricane signals his ponies to begin the attack. Immediately, the group of Dashites break off into two groups. One group soaring below to draw away the Raptor cloud ships, while the others launches rockets fired from their battle saddles. Hawkbeak's griffins swoop down onto the roof of the Titan's Hammer and start to blast holes in the hull for Rainbow's squad to infiltrate the ship. Rainbow Dash lands on the roof of the massive cloud ship. From behind her, a turret rotates around and fires, but before it can even kill a single pony or griffin, Hawkbeak's chain gun roars to life, sending a hail of bullets into the turret, splattering the guts of the Enclave pony inside. Rainbow says, That was too close. Now let's get moving already. The ponies under her command jump down through the blasted holes in the ship's hull and break up into their respective groups. Fractured leads his group forward to secure the ship's bridge, while Celestial carves a bloody path with her combat shotgun battle saddle as she leads her group towards the cloud ship's engine room. Rainbow Dash jumps down through the hole, saying, Okay, we're in. Hawkbeak, go aid Hurricane Wind. Do everything you can to buy us as much time as you can. From outside, Hawkbeak replies, Will do, as she flies away. Looking around at the inside of the cloud ship, Rainbow Dash says, I had forgotten how big these things were. They're like a floating maze. Airborne says, The bomb, according to the information Hurricane Wind gathered, should be in the troop bay. Rainbow Dash says, All right, follow me. The ponies gallop through the heavily fortified halls, tossing grenades into the various troop stations, blasting their defenders into bloody bits. Occasionally, they would get pinned down by a turret or fortified guard post, but every time, Rainbow would make short work of them with the magical energy weapons on her battle saddle. Passing by a porthole, Airborne can see the battle raging outside. Black clouds, explosions of flak fire, filling the sky with hissing pieces of shrapnel. Tracer rounds zipping around, looking to make their mark. Airborne watches in horror as one of Hawkbeak's griffins takes a round in the chest, the bullet punching clean through the griffin's armor, practically bursting the poor creature's chest open. The griffin's eyes roll back into his head as it plummets like a feathery rocket to the ground below. In his headset, he can hear Hurricane Wind breathing heavily. Airborne replies, How is it going out there? Hurricane Wind yells, Like hell. The griffins managed to take down one of the raptors, but the others aren't taking the bait anymore. Hurry up in there. I don't know how much more of this we can take. Airborne looks at Rainbow Dash, saying, We better double time it to the troop bay. Hurricane and Hawkbeak's forces are getting ripped to shreds out there. Rainbow nods and replies, All right, no more stopping to fight these Enclave idiots. We will gallop in a straight shot there. The ponies quickly pound through the maze of passageways, ignoring the bullets that whiz by. the muzzle flashes of the Enclave soldiers blurring as they rush by, ignoring the fact that death itself is nipping at their heels. As they enter the troop bay, Airborne can see the massive bomb. The shape of the bomb casing was round and skinny. On the nose of the device were painted the words, "Death to the Dashites." One of the engineer ponies named Black Hole rushes to the bomb and pulls out a toolkit from his saddlebag and opens up a panel on the bomb's side saying, "This is gonna take a while. The stuff is pretty ancient but enormously complex. Hold off the guards while I defuse the bomb." Just as Black Hole begins to work on the bomb, his brains explode all over the bomb casing. Airborne watches in horror as the headless torso slumps to the ground, still twitching with life. From one of the catwalks above, he hears a familiar voice saying in a mocking tone, "Oops, did I do that? I guess I should learn to be more careful when it comes to picking my targets." Rainbow Dash calls out, "Where are you, Steel Wings? You coward, show yourself!" Looking up, Airborne can see the catwalks above him are lined with Enclave soldiers, their barrels of their battle saddles trained down at the tiny group of ponies. Steel Wings says, "Take out the others, but leave Rainbow Dash, Airborne, and Starshine relatively bullet-free. I have something special in mind for them." The Enclave ponies open fire, but as Airborne tries to return fire, he finds he cannot fire his battle saddle no matter how many times he bites down onto the trigger bit. He says, "I can't get my battle saddle to work." Rainbow Dash replies, "Same here. What the hey is going on?" From above, Steel Wings replies, "Did I forget to mention that I had this troop bay installed with a magical dampening field? Your battle saddles won't be able to fire. So sad for you." The Enclave's accurate fire guns down the engineer ponies in Rainbow Dash's group, leaving her, Airborne, and Starshine standing alone among the pile of corpses. Steel Wings has his troops surround the now defeated ponies. The soldiers removing their respective battle saddles, Steel Wings sneers, saying, "It is only a matter of time before my men catch the other rats you call friends and kill them too. This farce of war will soon be over, and the Enclave can finally take its place as the leader of a new world." The Enclave ponies lead Airborne, Starshine, and Rainbow Dash to the ship's bridge. The large window reveals that the battle is still raging outside of the massive cloud ship. Starshine closes her eyes as one of Hawkbeak's talons attempts to fire its missiles at the bridge of the Titan's hammer. The ship's auto turrets spin around and fire at the Griffin, which implodes as the bullets from the turret rip into its body, the Griffin's lifeblood smearing a portion of the window. Steel Wings looks at the blood, saying, "Some pony should really clean that nasty thing off my ship." Rainbow, Airborne, and Starshine are forced to their knees as Steel Wings says, "We have already dealt with at least one of your group of friends who rather rudely tried to take control of my ship." Steel Wings gestures his hoof at the pile of bodies stacked in the corner of the bridge, then says, "Luckily, we managed to stop them before their foolishness nearly cost us everything. We also captured their leader." Steel Wings gestures to one of his guards, who quickly have a badly beaten Fractured dragged onto the bridge and forced down next to Airborne. Fractured looks at them with his swollen left eye, saying, "I see they got you guys as well. So where's Celestial? Is she with you?" Airborne shakes his head and says, "No, she isn't, but she will get the mission complete even without us." Airborne gazes angrily at Steel Wings, who says, "So confident of victory now, aren't you, Airborne? No matter. I will have this friend of yours in due time. After all, this is my ship, and there is no place she can hide that I won't find her. Over the intercom, a voice says,
"Commander Steelwings, we have just lost another one of our Raptor cloud ships. The Griffins took it out with those missile battle saddles."
Steelwings grinds his teeth in annoyance and replies, "Have all the remaining cloud ships focus their fire onto any Griffins. I want to see those hairballs turned into feathery corpses before we reach New Cloudsdale." The voice replies,
"Yes, sir."
Rainbow Dash and Airborne are tied to a large metal pole with Fractured and Starshine tied to another one just opposite of them. Steelwing says, "When this ship crashes into your precious city, you will watch it as it burns before you die, and you will know that there was nothing you could do to save it." Celestial watches the scene from above in a vent. She had her group of ponies split up into two groups. One would shut down the engines, while the other would sneak its way into the bridge through the cloud ship's ventilation shafts. She waves a hoof as she sees one of her ponies in a nearby vent signaling for him to begin the attack. The bridge erupts into gunfire as ponies swarm out of the ship's vents from every direction. Celestial jumps down onto the bridge platform, cutting down two of the Enclave soldiers with her deadly battle saddle. Steelwing dives down into the center of the control console pit for the cloud ship and orders his men to return fire. Celestial cuts the bonds holding her friends, then hands Airborne her knife and gestures to Steelwings. He nods and says,
"Yes, it's time to end this."
Airborne swoops down onto Steelwings, who lifts his battle saddle and fires at Airborne. Airborne winces as he feels the bullets tear through his wings, but he continues to press closer to Steelwings with Celestial's knife held tightly in his mouth. Steelwings continues to fire, riddling Airborne's armor with numerous bullet holes. Some of the bullets sink deep inside of Airborne's body, seeking to snuff out the flame of his life. His heart pounding and vision beginning to blur, Airborne pounces onto Steelwing, pinning him to the floor. Spitting the knife into his hoof, he begins to press the knife down towards Steelwing's throat. Steelwings, trying his best to avoid the knife by trying to kick Airborne off him, squirming like a worm. Airborne spits blood into Steelwing's face, saying, "For too long, Equestria has been plagued by ponies like you. Ponies who, instead of helping others, only help themselves. This land has languished for too long in the ruins of war. In the ruins of a war we never started. And now you have brought that war to our doorstep, just because we chose to live our lives different from you. What gives you bastards in the Enclave any right to think you can pass judgment on us?" Steelwings laughs, saying, "Don't be so hypocritical, Airborne. After all, you killed just as many ponies as I have, so what gives you the right to judge me?" Airborne replies, "You're right, I have killed, but I have never tried to hurt others intentionally like you have." Airborne headbutts Steelwing and drives the knife into his throat, saying, "Now die, you son of a bitch." The knife wound spurts blood into Airborne's face with each beat of Steelwing's dying heart. Steelwing's eyes start to glaze over, but he still manages to say, "Good luck trying to get out of here, Airborne. I ensured the bomb cannot be disabled. If you even try to, it will explode and take you to hell along with me." Steelwings grins up at Airborne, who removes the knife from Steelwing's throat and buries it into Steelwing's chest, pressing down with all the strength he can muster, feeling Steelwing's body shudder as the life leaves it. Airborne gets off of Steelwing's shattered body and gazes around the now silent room, looking at the rivulets of blood pouring down into the center of the ground, pooling around Steelwing's body, causing it to float a little. Airborne climbs out of the center console pit and leans against the wall, using his left hoof to stem the flow of blood from the wounds in his chest. Airborne can hear Fractured Heart saying, "Now what?" Rainbow Dash replies, "We finish what we came here to do. That's what." Starshine looks at Airborne and then sees the wound, saying, "By the goddesses, you're hurt pretty bad." Airborne smiles at her, saying,
"It's nothing I can't handle."
Starshine notes the tone of concern in his voice and says, "You were never very good at lying, Airborne. I have some healing potions in my pack. They should help you out." Airborne looks into her eyes and says, "There is no time for that. I have to stop this ship." Fractured replies, "How are we supposed to do that? Steelwing's men killed all the ponies that knew how to disarm the bomb." Rainbow Dash looks at them, saying, "No, he didn't. I can disarm the bomb, but I'll have to stay behind to make sure it is done properly." Airborne shakes his head, looking at Rainbow Dash, saying,
"That's not good enough, Rainbow."
She replies, "What other choice do we have?" Airborne replies,
"Steelwings ensured that no pony can disarm the bomb. Even if you tried, you would kill us all, and the blast would also take out New Cloudsdale as well. I will stay behind and pilot the ship away from the city. When the bomb detonates, it won't kill any pony but me."
Rainbow says, "That's not your call to make. I'm supposed to be the hero, remember?" Airborne winces and smiles, saying,
"You have to survive, Rainbow Dash. You're the best hope any Pegasi have of making sure we play our part in restoring Equestria to normal."
Rainbow Dash says, "You knew this was going to happen." Airborne nods and says,
"I figured this would be a one-way trip, but I don't care. I get to make sure my friends have it tomorrow, and that is worth dying for."
Starshine cries and hugs Airborne tightly. "There must be some other way. I can't live without you." Airborne embraces her, breathing in her scent, saying, "I need you to go on without me. Help the ponies of this world rebuild and live a happy life in peace for the both of us." She looks up at him with tears streaming down her face and nuzzles into his chest, saying, "I never wanted this to happen, Airborne. It should be me, not you, who has to stay behind." Airborne looks at Fractured and Celestial, who nod. Fractured grabs a hold of Starshine and wrenches her away from Airborne, saying, "Time to go." She desperately tries to cling to Airborne. She whinnies, "Airborne, don't do this. You don't have to die. Come with me." Airborne watches as Fractured and Celestial leave the bridge with Starshine, who is still crying out for him. Inside, Airborne can feel his heart breaking. He looks to Rainbow Dash, saying, "Make sure every pony gets clear of the blast." She nods and turns, leaving the bridge, then stops in the doorway, saying, "Lightning Dust and Thunderlane would be proud of you." He watches as her rainbow-colored tail disappears out of sight. Airborne starts to feel faint. Inside, his heart starts to slow. Making his way towards the cloud ship's wheel, he stumbles over, his body wanting to release from the bolts of pain shooting up his spine. He looks at his hooves and tries to push himself up, noting that he no longer has any feeling in them anymore. His vision starts to blur as he climbs into the pilot's seat, and then he loses sight of the world as his vision is swallowed by a crushing blackness. Airborne feels the pain wane, then slip away. He can no longer feel anything. When he regains his vision, he's looking at his now slumped body in the pilot chair. He tries to speak, but can't, thinking, his thoughts echoing through his entire being, "Don't take me yet. I still need my body to save the lives of the ponies I have come to love." With that thought, Airborne is sucked back into his body. He coughs and sputters, grabbing a hold of the cloud ship's wheel, wrenching the massive ship upwards. Unbeknown to Airborne, the bomb has gone to its final detonation sequence. 10. Airborne can feel the ship slowly responding to his control, the massive hulk heaving upwards into the clouds. 9. Hawkbeak watches as the Titan's hammer sails up through the clouds, the ship's massive engines burning twin contrails of smoke into the sky. 8. Hurricane Wind fires at the retreating Enclave Pegasi, watching his body sail down through the clouds and smack into the massive ship that is quickly rushing towards him. Hurricane Wind dodges the ship and feels the heat of the engines burn his feathers. 7. Fractured looks as the Titan's hammer soars higher into the sky, much higher than he had thought possible. 6. Celestial silently watches as the ship heads further into the atmosphere. Turning away, she thinks, "Goodbye, Airborne. Say hello to Darkstar for me." 5. Rainbow Dash looks as the Titan's hammer climbs higher into the sky. She says, "Now that's awesome. He just set a new record for being the first Pegasus to reach that far into the sky. And he is doing it while saving the whole of Equestria." 4. From a distance, Fluttershy can hear the roar of rockets as she watches the smoky contrail of the massive cloud ship ascend further beyond the reach of the ruined world she helped destroy. 3. Airborne shivers as the air inside the cabin begins to grow cold. Ice particles casting tiny rainbows over his body as rays of sunlight pierce through them. 2. Airborne's chest starts to heave, the air becoming thinner with each breath. 1. Airborne closes his eyes and thinks of Starshine. The ship bursts with a deafening explosion, the very air itself rent asunder. Starshine looks up to see the ship explode, then watches as the heavens are pierced by what looks like a nova burning brightly. The clouds parting and forming a halo, wreathing around the star. Then the star flickers and fades away, leaving an eerie silence that settles across the land. Tears come to Starshine's eyes and she says, "That's just like Airborne. To go out with a bang." Airborne struggles to get to his hooves, but finds no floor to stand on, just a vast and great expanse of nothingness all around him. Not opening his eyes, he hears some pony call to him. Perking his ears up, he slowly opens them. At first, all his eyes can make out are the blurry outlines of two ponies standing together. And then, the world comes into much sharper focus. Everything appearing much brighter and full of colors. Airborne had no words to describe. As far as he could tell, he was standing in a windswept field. The wind was warm and almost soothing as he trots his way towards the two ponies. One of the ponies is a female with a blonde mane and tail, her coat being a light blue in color. Her cutie mark was a lightning bolt and 3 stars. Next to her, a male with a charcoal gray coat. His mane and tail are light gray. His cutie mark is a lightning bolt piercing a storm cloud. Airborne notices they are both Pegasi. The female Pegasi says, "We're so proud of you, Airborne. You've done so much for me. I cannot thank you enough." The male Pegasus replies, "Thank you, Airborne, for redeeming my wife. I knew that you could do it." Airborne looks at them and says, "Who are you guys?" The Pegasi look at each other and chuckle. Then the male says, "My name is Thunderlane, and this is my wife, Lightning Dust." Airborne's eyes widen as he listens to Thunderlane continues saying, "And we're your great-grandparents." Airborne looks at them and then starts to feel his hooves give out from underneath him. Sitting on his haunches, he says, "There's no way this is possible." "There is no way this is possible." Lightning Dust ribs Thunderlane with her elbow, saying, "You laid it on a little thick, don't you think?" He shrugs. Lightning Dust trots over to Airborne and wraps her hooves around him, saying, "It's all right now, Airborne. Now we can be together, as a family. And just you wait till you meet your other relatives. They are all really eager to meet you." Airborne looks at them and says, "But you're dead. Which means that, He cannot bring himself to finish the sentence. Thunderlane looks at him sadly and nods, saying, "Yes, we are dead. As are you. I'm sorry to have to tell you that, but few ponies tend to walk away from a bomb exploding and live to tell the tale." Airborne looks up at Thunderlane and says, "But I didn't feel anything when I died." Thunderlane offers his hoof to Airborne, who takes it. Thunderlane pulls him to his feet, saying, "Well, that's probably the best thing about dying. You feel no pain. I know I didn't when the zebras destroyed Manhattan." Lightning Dust replies, "Neither did I when I was sitting in my bed reading in the Cloudsdale VA hospital when the zebras destroyed Cloudsdale. It took me a while to even figure out that I was dead. But none of that matters anymore. We are together as a family, and that is how it should be." Airborne looks at them, saying, "I have to go back. I can't leave Starshine to walk this world alone, regardless of whether I would be in heaven. I would miss her every day until she came here." Thunderlane and Lightning Dust look at each other, and then at Airborne, saying, "You really don't want to be here with us, or your family?" Airborne looks at them and says, "It's not that I don't want to be here with you. It's just, I don't want to be here without Starshine. She is everything to me. I couldn't dream spending an eternity without her." Lightning Dust pulls Airborne into a tight hug, saying, "I'm glad our descendant has a good heart, and such a fierce love for this very lucky mare. Thunderlane joins the hug, saying, "We will send you back if that is what you want, but this will be the first and last time we can do this. If you come here again, it will be forever, so try to live a good life. For Lightning Dust and my sake, do try to be careful, and always remember, we love you, Airborne." Airborne says, "I will be careful," then hugs them tightly, feeling tears roll down his cheeks. Then he is enveloped in nothingness again. Airborne can feel pain all over his body. Something inside of him pounding, sending pain throughout his body. He thinks, "What is that?" Recognizing the sound of his own heartbeat, he says, "That's right. It's the sound of me being alive. I'd almost forgot its sweet sound." Looking around, he can see he is covered in twisted pieces of jagged metal. Somewhere outside, some pony is calling frantically, calling his name. Then he hears another pony say, "It's no use, Starshine. He is gone." Starshine's voice replies back angrily, "How do you know? It will take a lot more than some Enclave piece of junk exploding to kill my Airborne." The other voice he recognizes as Fractured Heart says, "Starshine, there is no way he could have survived an explosion like that. We would be lucky to find even his hat in all of this mess." Starshine replies, "Then we will continue to keep looking until we find something of his, whether it's his body or a scrap of his armor. I am bringing Airborne home with me." Airborne calls out, "Guys, I'm here, trapped underneath this pile of junk." Starshine's ears perk as she hears something saying, "Did you hear that?" Fractured perks his ear up and shakes his head, saying, "I didn't hear anything." Airborne calls out again, and Starshine cries out, "He's over here! We found him!" Airborne can feel the ground shake with the hoof falls of many ponies. Then the pieces of metal are slowly lifted off of him. Starshine looks down at him, crying. Fractured says, "You are one lucky bastard, Airborne. You know that?" Airborne is gently placed on a stretcher and is carried from the hulking wreck of the Titan's hammer. As the medic ponies carry him, Airborne catches a glimpse of Hawkbeak, Hurricane Wind, Rainbow Dash, Fluttershy, and Celestial, all smiling at him from the massive crowd of ponies that had gathered around him. Rainbow says, "That was awesome!" Airborne blushes, then falls asleep, exhausted from his journey back from beyond death itself. A few days later, he awakens, seeing Starshine asleep in a chair at his bedside. Looking around the room, he recognizes it as a room in Fluttershy's compound. He nickers to Starshine, who awakens, saying, "Glad to see you're finally awake, Airborne." She kisses his forehead, and he replies,
"What happened while I was out? Did we win?"
Starshine smiles and says, "Yes, thanks to you, the Enclave won't be bothering our fellow Dashites for a long time. After the Titan's hammer blew up, the remaining cloud ship beat a hasty retreat back to the Enclave. They really don't have the military force to challenge us again after all the ponies we killed." Airborne breathes a sigh of relief and says,
"Where is every pony else?"
Starshine replies, "They're outside waiting to hear if you're okay. Should I call them in?" Airborne shakes his head and says,
"No, let 'em wait a little while. Right now, I want you all to myself."
Starshine blushes and leans down onto Airborne, who kisses her, saying,
"I missed you, and I promise I won't do something that stupid again."
She replies, "I will hold you to that promise, Airborne." After a few hours, Starshine opens the door to Airborne's room and says, "He's finally awake, every pony." Fractured, Hurricane Wind, Celestial, Fluttershy, and Rainbow Dash all trot into Airborne's room. He looks at them, saying,
"Sorry to have kept you waiting for so long."
Fractured says,
"We didn't mind. We could hear everything in the next room, and we figured you were too busy to bother with us anyways."
Airborne turns crimson, and Rainbow Dash says, "I want you to know, Airborne, I am appointing you to the head position of the Dash's Wonderbolt Academy, and as my captain of the reformed version of the Wonderbolts, I am calling them Dash's Lightning Squad of Awesomeness." Fluttershy looks at her friend and says, "I think you'll need to work on that name, Rainbow Dash. There's no way any pony will be able to remember that." Airborne nods in agreement, saying,
"I think you are right."
They all laugh as Rainbow Dash smiles, saying, "Yeah, I guess you're right," then starts to laugh. Word of Airborne's bravery in the face of certain death spread throughout the wasteland, and even into the Enclave Pegasus ponies had heard that Rainbow Dash was finally returned. Many Pegasi began to leave the Enclave despite their best efforts to prevent any pony from leaving. Airborne had Thunderlane and Lightning Dust's names added to the wall of remembrance as a tribute to his ancestors, then personally placed the names of Shining Armor and Princess Cadence onto the wall. Adding the names together with the names of Twilight Sparkle, Rarity, Pinkie Pie, Applejack, and the rulers of Equestria, who in death were finally reunited together forever. Fractured left a few days after the ceremony, vowing to restore the Crystal Empire back to normal and give the bodies of Shining Armor and Princess Cadence a proper burial. Celestial slipped away before the ceremony could even begin, Fluttershy commenting that a pony like her couldn't be tethered. Celestial was last seen crossing into the frozen wastes of the Crystal Empire, heading towards the cave where her lover, Darkstar, had died. She was never seen in Equestria again. Gradually, the land of Equestria began to heal, as the shadow of the Great War was lifted like a veil from the land. Starshine often caught Airborne gazing out the window in their home in the New Cloudsdale. She could tell that he was itching for another adventure, There were still so many ponies that needed a helping hoof, and she knew that Airborne would never rest until he had helped them all if he could. But his duties in New Cloudsdale kept him busy, and serving Rainbow Dash became an adventure itself. The Pegasi was still as wild as she has ever been so long ago. Flying over the land she had a hoof in ruining, she helped what ponies she could, then always returned to New Cloudsdale to lead the Pegasi who had finally found their place in the world of Equestria, helping bit by bit to rebuild the world they had been gone from so long. United with their earthbound brethren in a spirit of love and friendship that had survived all along in the Equestrian Wasteland, carried within the spirit of each and every pony. The end.